Good afternoon. Welcome to our Unite for Her Ask the Expert. We are so excited to be with you today. Today, and for this month's Ask the Expert, we have Jolene Hart. She's joining me today to discuss the frequent use of hair relaxers and hair straightening products that has been shown to double the risk of uterine cancer and the risk of breast cancer by 30%. Today, we will be finding these studies and we'll be talking about what they have found in these studies and the products that apply to them and the developing research around the personal care related for cancer in Black women. So, my name is Melissa Christie. I am your Senior Wellness Manager here at Unite for Her, and we are so excited to be here with you today. We could not do this without our sponsor. Our digital education events are brought to you by our 2022 educational sponsors. Thank you to West Pharmaceutical and our supporting sponsors, Daiichi Sankyo, Eli Lilly, and Merck. So I just want to take a moment to introduce Jolene. Jolene is one of our Unite for Her beauty advisors. Jolene is formerly a beauty magazine editor and she turned certified beauty health coach. She is also the author of the best-selling books Eat Pretty series, which includes Eat Pretty, Live Well, and Eat Pretty Every Day. And her newest book, Ignite Your Light and Shine On. Please welcome me in joining our expert today, Jolene Hart. Jolene, thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, Melissa. So
Hi.
nice to be here with you.
Thank you. You as well. We are so excited to have you here today and to learn more about, what's going on in the world today and in the hair care arena.
Yeah, some really interesting studies, and I'm so grateful to have you here as an expert as well, because this hits home for you, and this is a topic that you can speak to personally. So
It does.
I think we're going to have to share, both of us will be sharing some wisdom today.
Wonderful. I love it. Love it. Love it.
So should we get started and talk about the headlines that have been popping up lately around hair relaxer risks?
I think we should. I think that's a great thing. So, yeah, why don't we, what are the studies on the hair relaxers that's found and linked to cancer?
So this has come up really recently because there was a brand new study published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute that was related to uterine cancer. So this found that women who used hair relaxers more than 4 times in the last year had actually more than double the risk of uterine cancer. So even though the risk of uterine cancer is still low, this was a strong association. This was maybe surprising. It really showed a big increase in the number of women who had that risk of developing uterine cancer. Now, in the past, we've already seen that hair straightening chemicals have been associated with a higher risk of certain hormone-related cancers like breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So this is just kind of adding to that group of evidence that we have around these particular products, maybe particular chemicals in these products that are really concerning. So women who relax their hair regularly have a 30% increased risk of breast cancer. And, there are certain hair relaxers, some have lye in them. And if you're using the lye containing hair relaxers, that is actually associated with a more aggressive form of estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. So it's not only the risk of uterine cancer, but now we also have breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And overall, this is kind of adding to that bulk of knowledge about perhaps why we would want to avoid this group of products.
Yeah, that's I when you just use the statistic of using the hair relaxers or more times a year, that sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's not. It really is not. And I know if I can share, from my own personal experience, I'm the youngest of 6 children and 5 girls and 1 boy. So there was a lot of hair in our family. And my mother is a nurse by profession. And I remember her always saying that she didn't want us to get relaxers as young kids. So we would go through the process of my grandmother lived with us as well, and we'd have our hair straightened with a hot comb, which if
Yeah.
you're not familiar with that, someone would, the hot comb would sit on a stove and literally you would press your hair.
Wow.
And it was a process. It
Yes.
was it was definitely a process, but that is what my mother, wanted for us. Now, because I was the youngest, as my sisters got older, they decided to do things on their own. But for me, I remember this vividly. It was like my 19th birthday when I was in college, and I didn't go to college too far from home. So when I needed my hair done, I would still go home to a local beauty shop, is what we call them, and
Right.
get my hair pressed. But on my 19th birthday, I was like, oh, you know what? Now I think I'm mature enough that I'm going to get my hair relaxed. So in that sense, it was something that was easier for me. It was less time consuming, but again, I didn't realize exactly everything that was involved with the chemicals that are making your hair, straight. That was the
Right.
process to doing that. So when you're saying having it done 4 times or more a year, that's not that's realistic.
That's typical. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing that anecdote. It's so interesting. And I'm assuming that at that age, you knew a lot of other Black women that were doing the same thing with their hair.
Absolutely. I think, that's probably, I don't think it's anything that most people don't know, but yes, we were either straightening, but like I said, because the straightening process was so long, people went to the relaxers. It just
Yeah.
made everything so much easier. It's the convenience factor, right? As
Yes.
this is where the world that we live in, it's about convenience. So yes, so many. And like I said, my sisters were older, so they certainly had their hair relaxed before I did as well, because they were just older and they were, able to do that. But it just was something that we did. And it's also when you go to the beauty shops or the hair salons, it's almost like a community there as well. So although you're there for hours getting your hair done, it was very an enjoyable experience for most, because you're with friends or people that you've met or people that you meet up with because you're going there so regularly and so often.
Sure. So it's something that you want to continue because it's like a feel good experience. It's one of those self care, treatments that we all want to have in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can speak to that 19-year-old age and knowing that I never looked at a single ingredient in my, beauty products at 19 either. It's really not, I think, I mean, at least in the world that we grew up in, it was not something that you thought about having to check.
No,
It was just something exciting that you got to do for yourself and like you were, grown up enough to use. So I can identify with that part of it for sure. Um,
absolutely.
for people who aren't so super familiar with hair relaxers, and I'm sure a lot of our audience is, but so this is like a creamy treatment that chemically straightens curls. And what it does is it breaks the bonds that connect your keratin molecules that would cause texture and curl. It breaks those bonds so that your hair will be smooth and that can last for quite a while. So, like you said, the benefit is like less maintenance.
Yes. Yes. And I'm just looking over in the comments, and you're right, there's a comment saying that 4 times a year is literally nothing, because what happens with those relaxers is that you get the new growth, and
Right.
with that new growth, now it's coming in and it's curly again, right? And so you
Exactly.
need that to be straightened too. So it would be a process called a touch up. So
Yeah.
people would go and get a touch up for the new growth that was growing in their hair. So again, that 4 times a year is really not a
Yeah.
lot. It really is much more often than that for many.
And during that touch-up process, you're going right on your scalp too, and that's where you get the most absorption. That's where you got the most potential for the, chemical irritation too on your scalp.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, so that with that being said, how exactly what types of products does this pertain to?
Yeah, so this is specifically, and this study is specifically for hair relaxers, so not keratin treatments. This study also found that dyes, perms, body waves, there was no association with uterine cancer with those products. It was just the hair relaxers in this study. But I would say this is not just a hair relaxer issue because of looking back at other studies, they have found multiple types of hair products used by Black women, including hot oil treatments, anti-frizz, like leave-in conditioners, hair lotion. They've found about 45 different endocrine disrupting or asthma associated chemicals in that group of products. There was one study that found that 84% of the chemicals in these products that they found were not even on the product labels, which to me is staggering. Like, so you could be really vigilant. You could be looking at the ingredients on the back of your product and still finding ingredients that are not listed on the label, which is kind of mind blowing. So I would say the biggest concern is hair relaxers, but certainly this is an issue where maybe we're looking at other types of hair products too, and that you should still be careful, even if you're using other types of products for your hairstyling.
So let me ask a question. Like you said, some of these things were not on the labels.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Honestly, that is illegal. I have, one reason why some of the ingredients that came up and that were tested for may not have been on the label is sometimes they are added to other ingredients. And then when you combine certain ingredients together, you kind of make a third. So that's, for instance, formaldehyde. There are some ingredients that release formaldehyde when they're combined in a formula with water or with another ingredient. So that's one way that ingredients can get by without being on a product label. But beyond that, the majority of these ingredients should be listed on label. So 84% in that one study, to me, that's a huge concern.
Yes, I would say. Now, so what if what if someone has been using relaxers for most of their life, which I think many people have?
Yeah, and frequently. I mean, it's tricky. These studies haven't followed women over a long period of time. What I do know from other studies that we've shown and we can use as evidence is that when you switch your product routine, your body tends to respond quickly. So there's one study that showed over the course of like 3 or 4 days, how many chemicals are being excreted in the urine of women who changed their products from conventional to organic and natural. And that's just one example, but we do know that your body does work every day constantly to detoxify. So if you are going to switch your exposure, there's always a reason to switch. There's always a benefit to switching. So don't say, oh, I've done this for so long, it's not worth me changing at this point.
Yeah, and I think, Jolene, you and I have certainly had conversations about this before. It's not just one thing. So just like you said, oh, I've done this for so long, it's not going to make a difference. It will make a difference because it's not just one thing that is the culprit, so to say. It's kind of everything, kind of together.
Right. And any
Yeah.
change you can make is going to be beneficial in reducing your exposure. And like you said, it could be something beyond your beauty products, your environment, your air quality, your water quality, all of those things.
Well, what other personal care ingredients have shown to be a particular risk to Black women?
So certainly the endocrine disrupting chemicals, those are the ones that act like hormones in the body. We talk about them a lot in our wellness days.
Mhm.
They include parabens and phthalates. And often we're using multiple of these ingredients at the same time, so the effects are amplified. You can get mixtures, chemical mixtures together, and then you get multiple endocrine disrupting chemicals, and that takes a big toll on your body. And often the exposure can start really young, like you mentioned. Even young girls are using products that sometimes have these endocrine disrupting ingredients. Researchers found specifically parabens increased the growth of Black breast cancer cell lines, but in the study, they actually didn't affect white breast cancer cell lines at the same dose. So we don't really know why that was happening,
Mm.
but certainly parabens are of concern, and the general group of endocrine disrupting chemicals, which show up in things like plastics, in fragrance. So you want to look out for things like that.
Well, and I think fragrance is a big part of it as well.
Yeah. Yep. Everything has a fragrance, right? And so you want to look for something that is a natural fragrance or a fragrance without the use of phthalates. You'll often see phthalate free fragrance on the label. It is those phthalates that are the endocrine disruptors. And that's where the problem is for our bodies. We're a little frozen. I hope it's not me. Maybe it's on both sides. Bear with us for a second. Whoops, I guess I'm here. Melissa will probably pop back on. Just to add to that question, talking about why experts hypothesize that some of these ingredients were worse for Black women, it really comes down to the exposure or the frequency of use. So, in the study that showed the increase in uterine cancer, Black women have typically a much far higher use of straightening products. So, Black women in that study were about 8% of the study participants, but those women made up about 60% of the total use of hair relaxers in the study. So, certainly, the reason for some of this, the worse effects for Black women has to do with the frequency of exposure and frequency of use. Hi.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm not
No,
sure.
that's okay. Tech issues
With
happen all the time. You're back on.
absolutely technology. So I was sitting there talking, and then I noticed that it was not
It was
going.
quiet for a minute.
My apologies there.
No
My
worries, you're
apologies.
back. So I just was kind of adding to that last question, talking about why the effects seem to be worse for Black women, and it really came down to that frequency of exposure or
Hmm.
frequency of use.
Yes, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely. Let me see. Why do experts hypothesize that the effects were worse for the Black women?
Again, that was the just being more common in their routines for Black women, using these products more. Some studies indicate for some reason that Black women have a higher exposure to more of those endocrine disrupting chemicals than white women. And we don't know why. One study identified, personal care products, diet, contraceptive use as probable sources of exposure. So this is not just a beauty product issue. This is just, in general, an environmental issue. So you want to look all over, in your lifestyle to see where you might be getting exposure to these endocrine disrupting chemicals. And when I talk about this, it's frustrating. I often get the question, but why are these ingredients allowed in our products anyway? Why do I have to worry about this? Why is this a concern for me? And it really is the way our national laws around personal care are set up. So, the federal law that regulates cosmetic safety is more than 75 years old in the US. It doesn't require companies to share safety information with the FDA. And that law bans ingredients that are harmful once we know that they're harmful, but it doesn't have provisions for the FDA to evaluate the effects of those chemicals before they get put on shelves. So in many cases, these chemicals have been in our products for decades, and they've never truly been evaluated. And that's essentially the problem in the way our national laws are set up. So it puts the onus on the consumer to be their own advocate, to be
Mhm.
skeptical, to ask questions, and to use a skeptic's eye when they're picking what to put on and in their bodies.
And I'm sure, someone would ask, like, what are my choices? What are my
Yeah.
alternatives? What are some of the things that I could be doing to make a difference?
Well, I know you can speak to that from your experience too, because at some point you decided to stop using relaxers.
Hmm.
Do you want to
I
share
did.
your experience and recommendations?
Absolutely. So, like I said, when I was 19, I decided to go and start using hair relaxers. But then in 1997, I had a car accident, which I thankfully I was fine, but I did have to have stitches in my head. And because of that, I was totally, fearful of getting then any chemicals anywhere near. And it came full circle at that point. I remember what my mother was saying about the chemicals. So since that, it's been really over 25 years that I've had any hair relaxers or anything. So what I do personally, I'm pretty low maintenance when it comes to that. I just kind of just wash it and just blow it dry straight.
Mhm.
But I know that there's some alternatives. Like so many people decide that, hair is so important to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's important because not only do you want to be, and I'll say stylish, but you want to know that you fit in. And, kind of piggybacking and jumping into something else, it kind of goes right into conjunction with the Crown Act of 2022, right? So if someone is not familiar with the Crown Act is a bill that is in legislature right now that is being proposed so that African Americans, particularly Black and Brown women and children, and are not discriminated against because of the texture of their hair, because of the style that they wear. Because for so long, it wasn't considered beautiful to wear your natural hair. Wasn't, and people were actually discriminated by it. Um, but now, I think a lot of things are changing and there are alternatives. People can certainly just wear their natural hair, and
Yes.
embrace it and love it, because that's who we are. So that's definitely an option. There's an option for some people, take it to another and they, maybe decide to grow dreadlocks, where
Mhm.
it's very low maintenance for that. Low maintenance, and you're not straightening your hair. I know that there's a process of keeping the locks really, moisturized and everything, but there is a process for that. Like I said, I usually just wash and just blow my hair dry, and I don't usually put anything on it. Then there's, hair braiding, and either with your natural hair and keeping your hair in braids, or using extension for hairs as well. So there are options. But I think it's really important for everyone to realize that, being who you are, being your authentic self is really important. And that's why this Crown Act is very, so truly important to everyone right now. Do you agree, Jolene?
Absolutely, and just thinking about, I mean, I hope this was well before our time, but I'm sure it's even been, more recently, is that you're talking about like the perceived beauty of Black women's hairstyling, but also it wasn't seen as appropriate even to be able to have your natural hair. Like, say you were a newscaster. I saw someone's story about feeling like they had to use relaxers to be like a certain level of professionalism, which
Mhm,
to me is
mhm.
mind blowing. And this is your, your gorgeous natural hair, and certainly as Black women it requires a lot of upkeep. So like what you're saying, it's it's a lot, it's a complicated process to figure out what works best for your hair. The women I know that have, textured hair or even curly hair, it takes them a while to like find their groove with how to style
Yes.
that hair. So it's not something that's necessarily easy to say, oh, I'm just gonna stop using relaxers and then like tomorrow I'm gonna understand how to care for my hair in a new way. It might take a little bit of transition and figuring out, how to a new way to style, but a new way to kind of view your hair and show that natural beauty.
Absolutely. And we talk about women, but this affects children as well. Children going to school, and young girls, they want to be beautiful, right? They want to know that
Yes.
they're pretty, and that carries on in life. It starts out as a young person, but it obviously
Yeah.
carries on in life. So this issue is so extremely important to everyone right now. And that's why we are so glad that we are at least, trying to bring some light to it, and give some options and just discuss that. But for our cancer communities, that is, that's really an important subject as well. And people are wondering, like, did this really cause my cancer, and what do I do now, and things like that. How would we address that with our communities?
It's so hard, and it's so tempting to try to say, like, to try to figure out what the cause was, but it's really more this, especially this is more of a correlation than a causation. So we're
Mhm.
seeing that this is one of many things in our environment and our lifestyles that very likely adds to that risk, but we can't ever say that that was a direct cause. And so I understand the desire to be able to pinpoint it, to like figure it out, because it is like this lingering question. But in this case, all we can do is say that this is one of many factors that can be an influence on the way your body works.
Yeah. Wow. And I know that, Jolene, from a perspective, when you're speaking to our women in our program, that you're always saying, don't change everything at onse.
I
You
know, because that's like so stressful, right? I mean, to say you have to throw everything out and change overnight, same to do with your hair, with your skincare and your makeup. It's not like you can just kind of figure out a new routine the next day. So, yeah, as you use something up, and you rebuy, be more careful with looking at those ingredients. Look for the seals on your products that show certified organic, or there we have a whole list of seals in our downloadable beauty guide on our for our page that you can look for, that just give you a little more security that someone else has vetted the ingredients in a product, because it can be so hard. But yeah, don't throw everything out. Start with
Mm-mm.
like maybe the three products you use the most. something that you use over the greatest area of your body or with the most frequency. And that makes a really big difference. And then you
Yes.
don't have to stress as much over the little things that you use occasionally, the perfume you wear on a special occasion. Look at the big picture of your exposures because it goes way beyond beauty.
Yeah, that's great advice. Again, a little bit at a time. Take your
Yeah.
time and just do that. So I'm just looking, we have quite a few people over in the chat, and I'm just wondering if there's anything that we can address there. I know that someone was asking, can you tell me if someone is diagnosed estrogen receptor positive, how it can be confirmed if the patient was diagnosed because of the hair relaxer? Isn't it hard to prove?
Mhm.
And we know.
Yeah. No, it's just part of that overall picture of potential exposures or potential effects on your body. But yeah, there's not a way to prove that causation. I mean, certainly there have been cases made for certain ingredients in the past. So we look at cases against like Johnson and Johnson and talc and asbestos exposure and baby powder. So that was
Mhm.
a massive amount of people who had been using this product since childhood, and they were able to, in some cases, to prove that causation. But otherwise, it's so hard to be able to do that for individuals.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about going forward? Like, for our hairstylists, what does this mean for them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there is legislation again, being presented at the moment that is a package of beauty laws. One of them is protection for salon workers, which we desperately need. If you are a salon worker and you're exposed to these products regularly, that's a really big concern. So,
Mhm.
to me, it's sort of you have to assess that risk that exposure risk each day.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad we're shedding light on this today. And, just, as we are just kind of moving forward, what advice can you give is maybe some last words or, that one can do or what we should look for, things that we should be aware and how we want to communicate this to our families, right? We know that our families, our communities are so important to us. What should we be telling others about this as well?
Well, you can make it a conversation. This is certainly a very personal choice about what makes you feel your best. But if this does raise concerns for you, and certainly if it does for you, I'm sure you know many other women who have a similar routine. Open up the conversation next time you're with your friends or your sisters or your coworkers, even, who have a similar routine, and talk about your concerns and talk about alternatives. And you might even find that someone else has a great suggestion for a different product or a salon they found that uses natural alternatives. Certainly, those options are growing. And for women or for salon workers, providing a salon that offers more natural alternatives, that offers oil treatments and keratin instead, or offers, extensions and wigs and weaves instead, and focuses on that, would give people that environment to have that self care practice that you talked about, the community, but have hopefully an alternative that's going to avoid a lot of the exposures that we're talking about.
And I'm glad that you reiterated that, the keratin process is not one that affects it or using the hair extensions or using weaves and weaves, so
Yeah.
those are alternatives that are all viable options to many. So that's definitely a good point. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, and again, it like really starts with this grassroots demand for something better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of our beauty products have changed, and how we've had, better offerings that now are in Target and Walgreens. We didn't have them there a few years ago because we've been demanding more, and we've been putting our dollars toward the products that are going to be better for us. So again, it's like we have to, unfortunately, like grassroots demand better.
Well, and I love that you said that because I was just recently in actually TJ Maxx, and there's a brand, and I don't want to misspeak and say the wrong one, but I noticed that it is one of the brands that are, I think it's TGIF.
Okay.
Um, um, I can't think. But anyways, we are seeing these brands more mainstream, and I love how you said it's like this grassroots effort. Like we do have to demand this. We
Yeah.
need this for ourselves, and who's going to stand up for ourselves better than us, right? So as a community, as women of color, as people who just want better for themselves, for their health care, we have to demand this. So I am glad that we are starting to see it in different areas as well. Someone asked in the chat too, like what other things, including foods, should we be looking out for as well? Because we said this all works together. It's just not one product, right? It's all
Yeah.
of this that works together. So what are some of the other things that we should be aware of and looking for?
I know for me in my lifestyle, I'm really conscious about plastic exposure. So, trying to store leftovers in glass containers, don't heat anything up in plastic, which is tricky. Like you're getting takeout, you're going to get it in a plastic container, right? Or
Mhm.
to, look at any of those, kind of BPA lined cans, any of those plasticizing chemicals. Those are the ones I'm most concerned about exposure to. And it's impossible to get zero exposure to these chemicals. So any effort that you make is just going to kind of reduce the burden on your body because we're all getting exposed to these chemicals every day. They're in our register receipts that we get at stores. We know that we're coming into contact with these chemicals, and you see products that are BPA free, but they use an alternative that is also problematic, and that we're finding a lot of these alternatives are also problematic. So it, sometimes it means buying yourself a fancy glass water bottle that you drink out of rather than plastic, or a nice stainless steel, something that you're not going to have that leaching and exposure into. And it can often be like an investment, but then it's a real change, and that can make a big dent in your exposure and reducing that exposure each day.
Yeah, and it is about change, and it's about knowing, what is best for you. And sometimes change is not always easy, but we have to know what why we're doing it. And so we just put that effort forward to make that change. But, you know, um, it's, I think that with the hair care, again, it is so important that we feel comfortable, right? So we want to know that um, I am I feel good about myself. I feel good about my health hair, my overall, hair
Yeah.
health. And it's just something that we want to make sure that we're being really, really diligent about. And so, whether it again, it's wigs. Some people say, the wigs don't feel comfortable, or maybe the braids after time may cause hair loss. But I mean, I think really what our message is today is just that know that there are alternatives. And, like,
Mhm.
let's not rely on those things that are going to be harmful for our health. We know that there are many alternatives there, and we just want to continue to educate and make sure that these topics are front of knowledge for those who are out there now and just want to know more about it. And Jolene, that's why we are so glad that we have you as our beauty
Right.
advisor to bring about these topics and to make sure that it is front and center. And even after today, there's always a way of contacting Jolene for more information. This conversation will live on our website today, and so that anybody can go back. And Jolene, like, if where can they find your information about, this beauty guide and some of the things that they should be
Yeah.
looking
So
for?
the beauty guide is uniteforher.org/beauty. So, you get a little 20-minute video just with the top 5 ingredients to avoid. And then there's a downloadable guide. Last time I checked, it was like 14 pages, and we keep it updated. Oh, that reminds me, there's an amazing resource now. This is from the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, and this is the Black Women's Natural Beauty Database. So I have the link to that on the most updated guide. If you go and download it, that's something that's a fantastic resource. It was compiled for brands that were specifically for Black women and also created by Black women. And this is the Non Toxic Black Beauty Database. So, this is just a wonderful brand new resource that's out there that is going to be
Wonderful.
specific for Black women, for the products that you're using to hopefully help with this disparity of. This group of products that seems to have, the hair relaxer seems to have more of the concerning ingredients. I also found this amazing statistic when I was researching this, that Black women purchase and use more beauty products per capita than any other demographic. And Black women spend $7.5 billion on beauty products a year. So think about like the buying power that you have as a community. You spend 9 times more on hair products than the average consumer. So if I were a beauty product company, I would be looking to you for what to do, what products I should market, what I should be selling, because you are driving demand with those dollars. So that is
Absolutely.
some fierce power.
Yes, that is. Wow. That's really good information to know that. So we have power. We
Absolutely. And I think just like, mobilizing it and demanding better, which we all are doing for ourselves, but certainly to know that you have that buying power.
wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. Oh, that really is
Because I
amazing.
mean, a lot of these treatments are not cheap either, right? It's a
They're
huge
not.
investment.
It is definitely a huge investment. And again, you've heard us say that it wasn't just 4 times a year. It
Right.
really was multiple times a month that you could have been going. And so you add that up and you start to think about the dollars that you were spending. And you're
Yeah.
right, that buying power is tremendous.
Yeah.
So we do have that right to demand more, to demand what's right for us, for what's good for our health. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm trying to see if where I can share the the Black Women's Beauty database. Maybe let's see. Is there a chat where I can put that?
There is
Oh, here we go. No, that's host chat. Well, I will share it afterward under the video. I'll make sure I post it underneath. And again, it's also in the downloadable guide if you want to go and grab that resource. It's in there.
Okay, that would be great. And again, because this is going to live on her library,
Great.
that information will be accessible there too.
Yeah.
So great. So are there any last words, Jolene, that you have for us?
Again, I know this can be so overwhelming. It overwhelms me. Look at that big picture and just try to focus on, the little ways, the little improvements that you can make, the little adjustments, and don't get overwhelmed. But I hope that you feel empowered by knowing more and by understanding more about the information that's coming out. I don't want this to be overwhelming or fear inducing. I want it to feel empowering so you know what's out there, you know what to demand and what to look for. Because we want the best, want the best for women who are using these products to make themselves feel, good and to care for their bodies. So we deserve that.
Well, like you said, it may sound overwhelming, but it is empowering. And that is a wonderful word that you use. It is definitely empowering.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being
Thank
here with us.
you. Thanks for being here to lend your expertise, to share your personal story and your advice that is so invaluable to this whole community. So I am so grateful to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, we are here in this together. So, and we want our community, we want those who are watching on Facebook to know that if you have any questions whatsoever about beauty, about skincare and healthcare, Jolene Hart, she is the girl to go to. She has so much expertise and so much knowledge in this, and we are so truly blessed to have her as a part of Unite for Her to share this information with.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to work with Unite for Her.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, as one last reminder, we do want to again say thank you to our sponsors, our presenting sponsor of West Pharmaceutical and our supporting sponsors of Daiichi Sankyo, Eli Lilly, and Merck. And this is just, one of the Ask the Experts that we have. We have a couple more coming up before the end of December. We have one next Wednesday, December 14th, that will be talking about alcohol and breast cancer. And then we have one the very next day, December 15th at 1 p.m., talking about mindful based stress reduction therapy and answering any questions that you may have on that. So we do thank you again for joining us this afternoon. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to us here at Unite for Her. It is definitely our pleasure to serve you. Again, my name is Melissa Christie. I am your Senior Wellness Program Manager at Unite for Her. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon. Take care.